what is going to happen. That's not supposed to happen.
If a planet's going to crash into Earth, you can't really just build a bunker out of like metal in your backyard.
Maybe this deity or entities,
It was Zeus.
that she happened had to be Zeus.
It was Zeus.
I take it back. It was all Zeus.
If you want to keep up with all things Frost Files, make sure to shoot us a follow on our socials at the Frost Files Podcast.
Ready, so today we are going to be talking about eclipses. More specifically, the eclipse that just occurred on April 8th, 2024. It was the subject of a lot of controversy. It garnered a whole bunch of attention. Thousands of people came out to go visit and watch the eclipse.
Cameron, what is an eclipse?
So an eclipse is essentially when two celestial bodies, like the sun and the moon, line up, and they're, from us down here on Earth, they're in direct line with each other. One is blocking the other out. So that's essentially, in layman's terms, what an eclipse is.
Why is it important?
Throughout Earth's history, they have been looked at as phenomenons. In some cultures, they're seen as like an omen. In some cultures, they're seen as like a blessing. Some cultures, they literally signify the end of the world as they would know it. So they're very important to a lot of different peoples in the Earth for many different reasons. For some of us, they're just cool phenomenons that don't happen very often in our life. Others, they can, have catastrophic consequences, for coming about. But it all just kind of depends on your belief system, where in the world you're from and what you believe in.
And that leads us to the paranoia, where a belief put around the eclipse can turn into something much more. So as we talk about paranoia, let's start with the 2017 eclipse.
Yeah, so the eclipse of 2017, I believe the date was August 21st, 2017. I was in high school at the time. Well, we were in high school at the time. I believe that was like right after our senior year or something like that, or, coming at the close of our senior year. I remember hearing a lot about the eclipse back then, but, when you're a teenager that's not very interested in anything outside of, like, girls and going to the gym, the moon in front of the sun or the sun in front of the moon doesn't really make a huge impact on your life. But one thing I do remember are some of the weird conspiracy theories coming out around that time. And of course, anything outside of your usual norm is guaranteed to garner some form of weird conspiracy theory. But one thing that is interesting about that 2017 eclipse is that there were 7 cities named Salem in the United States which were in the direct line of totality for that eclipse. Meaning you could be in, I believe, Salem, Oregon was the first Salem in the line, and then Salem, South Carolina was the last Salem in that line. So the 7 Salems of the eclipse, that was a really weird thing. And we'll touch a bit more on that in a bit here, but what about you, Daniel? Was there anything in the 2017 eclipse that kind of stands out to you?
Just the Nibiru thing, the mass panic behind that, and how many 40-year-olds they got to build bunkers, which is just insane to me, because if a planet's going to crash into Earth, you can't really just build a bunker out of metal in your backyard. The thought process behind that doesn't make sense to me. Not much you can do. Nibiru in general is just a weird thing. We'll probably cover that one day too. That's something I'm very interested in talking about.
And of course, anytime you have an eclipse, there's always the fear or the belief that this is like the end. This is it. It's the world is ending. The moon is going to fall out of the sky, crash into the earth, or the poles are flipping. There's going to be insane seismic activity. The animals are going to go crazy. People are going to go crazy. There's always something that comes out around that time. Um, Actually, just kind of wanted to touch back on some historical things surrounding eclipses. In, I believe it was ancient like Norse mythology, um, and I'm sure some historians out there can be a bit more specific or correct me if I'm wrong, but um, one of the most basic ideas they had of an eclipse was this, I guess, mythology of two wolves that would chase the sun and the moon. I'm not going to try to pronounce their names, but if you've played God of War, you've probably seen or heard of these wolves. Basically, once they catch the sun and moon, sky goes black, and that's the beginning of Ragnarok, or the end of the world. So we have literally like centuries old tales of eclipses being the end of the world. So it seems to be, you know, more of a modern phenomenon. People are crazy and think that the world is going to end, but really these ideas have been around for centuries. Our ancestors, you know, believed in this stuff.
Yeah, that's the thing. This has really always been going on, and it kind of fades in and out of consciousness because it only goes around certain parts of the world every so often. And it's just now that we got technology. So, I mean, when that would happen down a certain path, like once every 100 years in like certain cultures and stuff, depending on where you were around the world. So I can
Yeah.
completely see that being a bigger thing. I think today a lot of the conspiracies is a little harder to get behind with the knowledge we have and the internet. We know where they happen and how often they happen. I just think some of these theories are, it's a little more outlandish. I just the people have so much more information, they're not using it. So
Yeah. On like the flip side of things, like in Navajo culture, it's believed that like during eclipses, it's like a moment of like change and like the beginning of kind of like a new phase for like the sun. Uh, and they actually practice. You're not supposed to go outside. You're not supposed to look at like the sun during eclipses. It is in just of a gesture of like showing respect, kind of like um, like you're going through like a big change, or the sun is going through like a big change and kind of needs like privacy. I mean, of course, I wouldn't really word it like that, because the belief gets deeper than that. That's just kind of mine as a outsider, perspective to Navajo culture around eclipses. It's not that deep, but yeah, in not all cultures are eclipses looked at negatively. Some they're praised as kind of positive things. Even ancient China as well. They believed that eclipses were a way to, you know, tell the future of, or kind of predict the fortune of the next emperor, and stuff like that. So they're kind of looked at as like prosperous times. If there was an eclipse, it was a happy time. It was a big celebration and stuff like that. But nowadays, now we're just stuck with crazy people and um, people who take themselves a bit too seriously and end up um, hurting other people who really did not deserve it.
so on April April 8th, right? Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
So April 8th, the day of the eclipse, it was actually the morning of um, a woman that goes by the name of Danielle Johnson ended up taking the life of her boyfriend at the time and her 8-month-old child, as well as herself. So it was just a really unfortunate situation that kind of happened, and the eclipse played a huge role in this.
Now, with that, my understanding, this all happened like the early hours of the 8th. So this is before the eclipse has even like happened, right?
Yeah, no, this is before the eclipses happened, very early in the morning. But apparently, not the husband, but the boyfriend, was sitting on the couch already at this time. So, I mean, we're never gonna really know what happened in the house beforehand. If they had been in a fight prior, if she woke him up to go somewhere, and then they were fighting in the living room. But all we know is he was on the couch in the living room when all this started to take place early in the morning.
Yeah, and then also just to point out for the audience, there's because this is such a new case that's developing. There's obviously a lot of information out there on this already, but um, we are gonna kind of be keeping some details, uh, you know, private. I mean, of course, all this information is out there. Everyone can do their own research on the topic, and then also there's information that's just has not and probably will not be released to the general public for the time being. So with that, of course, all respect to the victims involved, but some details we are going to kind of be keeping private, just for respect towards the family. This is like this started at like 3 in the morning, right?
Yeah, so I know neighbors nearby were woken up by the arguments. So that's some of the first evidence we have of the murder and everything that took place. Not that it was hard to put together, but there you go. That was the beginning of the evidence.
I think with after X amount of time of going back and forth, that eventually led to Danielle stabbing her partner, which he later did succumb to his injuries and was pronounced dead at the scene once the body had been discovered. But it does go a little bit deeper than that. They were not just alone in the apartment their 9-year-old child and their 8-month-old child were also present in the apartment at the time. And in an account from the 9-year-old child, which Ms. Johnson had allegedly tried to drag him out of the apartment, realized that she couldn't drag him out of the apartment, gave up, and from there, got the kids down into the car. The 9-year-old is holding the 8-month-old, probably just in pure, terror, I would have to assume. They ran the front gate of the apartment complex. She's clearly manic and erratic and probably spouting some, like, obscenities in the car. I mean, you've seen her Twitter. I think the tweets are still up. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah,
Lots of very hateful stuff on there. We spent like 30 minutes going through it, and
yeah,
it's
we did.
bad.
Yeah, we won't say too much, but she definitely did target some racial groups and stuff and made some comments. Most of those were probably through retweets and likes and stuff, but you get the picture of the person looking through there. One of the quotes, and this is something she said a lot actually, was she would always say, "Wake up, wake up." Those were in a few of her tweets, that line. And then she said, "The apocalypse is here. Everyone who has ears, listen. Your time to choose what you believe is now. If you believe a new world is possible, for the people, right now." Maybe I read that last line weird. If you believe a new world is possible, it doesn't really make sense, and that kind of makes sense in its own way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then another one reads, "There's power in choice, there's power in choice. Repost to make the choice for the collective." Which is kind of rambling conspiracy theory talk. It's pretty hard to decipher that as like a normal functioning human. I don't want to sound too mean about it, but unfortunately there was something going on with her at the time. And if that was progressive or just happened out of nowhere, that stuff matters. But as far as we know, it had been going on for a little while, maybe a few years.
Yeah, I mean, that sort of snap or flip of a switch, doesn't just happen. Especially with the erratic behavior over social media. This is probably something that's been building for some time. a lot of the tweets and stuff like that seem to, and I guess her TikToks leading up to the night of the eclipse, or the morning of the eclipse rather, reference like spiritual warfare on her and on others. Whatever she, you know, really truly meant by that, or whether or not she was feeling something. Because I know some people, they feel things, that most people don't. Whether it's physical feeling or just kind of something that tingles the brain or scratches the brain just in a certain way. But um, she had made these claims of spiritual warfare. How that evolves into harming, your children, the people, the only people in life that you're basically sworn to dedicate your life to protecting, by all means. How that sort of evolves into that is it's insane to me. But clearly, this is yeah, some form of mental health issue. I don't know if this was ever diagnosed or if she ever was receiving treatment for that. But yeah, there's definitely some mental health problems.
Something I think I find interesting is she had some likes and retweets about like parenting stuff, and I think even some comments. Like she was about being a good parent, so how she progressively got that bad is like not only sad but also like I mean you genuinely have to ask the question how, why. Um,
Yeah.
it's really confusing. Not saying she was like some of her older tweets were still bad, but they definitely weren't as bad. Um, and then on top of that, like she did have some parenting stuff, so she clearly cared about parenting. I mean, if you don't care about parenting, I guess there are some types of parents who will go online and pretend they're a good parent, but it didn't really seem the case for her. She wasn't like leaving comments everywhere, being obnoxious. So it seemed like she had a genuine care, and um, this might have something to do with the boyfriend. That's the open theory I kind of have.
Possible, but I mean, with that being said, could there have been some form of, spiritual warfare, I guess for lack of a better term, or some form of, manipulation that kind of led her into this frenzy, whether any form of like narcotics involved, um, I mean, this erratic behavior and this manic state. Maybe it's not a mental health thing at all. Maybe there was actually some, I guess I'll say third party that kind of influenced this erratic behavior. Um, I don't know if she's had any substance abuse issues or, again, mental health. I'm not a therapist and I'm not a doctor, so I can't make that determination. But what if there was some unseen force that had had an influence on her, um, similar to what she's been warning people about. That's also, you know, maybe we can't fully take that off the table. I mean, she was in a lot of these tweets and posts, warning people that you'll need to protect yourself and you'll need to shield yourself, essentially from these unseen forces and maybe despite her best efforts, she was not able to protect herself, and as a result, ended up, committing these heinous crimes.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Um, it most likely, and it could have been multiple things too. But I have a strong theory that, as well, that it probably also had to do with like her group of friends. I did see a clip from a podcast she was a part of, and it did seem kind of like one of those regurgitation. Um, that was the worst way I could have explained it. That's so gross. Um, but I mean, that's what it is. They regurgitate ideas. Um, they don't allow too much discussion outside of what their beliefs are, and they just talk to each other back and forth. Um, and I mean, that's kind of where like-minded people like that who already buying into conspiracy theories kind of grow, and that's where it can be kind of dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and I'm not going to roll out a. She was not a. She's big into horoscopes and like spirituality. Um, so we're never going to rule out anything supernatural, especially on a conspiracy podcast. So
Exactly. You're like I'm saying, hey, you never know. It could have been some unseen force or third party. I mean,
um,
she was the one warning people, but hey, baby, she just, and this is not to, in any way, shape, or form to make light of the situation or the victims. And, again, this information is out there. There's articles and stuff you guys can read, but the 9-year-old did end up surviving uh, the situation. I won't go into specifics of what happened, again, just for privacy reasons for that minor. But the 9-year-old child is the only survivor of that evening. Um, yeah, again, not to make light of anything, but hey, I won't rule out any form of supernatural or spiritual influence that could have had an impact. I mean, for thousands of years, people have practiced different religions, and even in modern times, in today's world, you can go into, a church and you can see people, embodied by the spirit, so to say, of the God they worship. You see it in your everyday life. Oh, this is so beautiful. This must be God at work, or something like that. Um, just maybe this deity or entities,
it was
that,
Zeus.
that
It was
she
Zeus.
happened had to be Zeus.
It was Zeus.
I take it back. It was all in Zeus.
um,
Um,
but no, yeah,
yeah,
no light of the situation.
yeah.
I was gonna say
Um,
my sister does Reiki, just the same as that lady did, uh, and she actually said, I guess Reiki is also very spiritual. I don't really
Gotta take
understand.
that girl's car keys away.
Yeah. Um, oh no. Uh,
Okay, that one was a joke. That one was a joke.
so was the Zeus
Uh,
one. We get one each.
yeah.
We're going to talk about a lot of serious stuff on this podcast. And we still give condolences and everything. We get one each, depending on the topic. I feel like this one, yeah, we get one.
I mean, just some of the quotes you mentioned earlier. Pulling up. There is power in choice. There is power in choice. Repost to make the choice for the collective. Um, the eclipse is the epitome of spiritual warfare. Get your protection on and your heart in the right place. Um, and that's really hard to read. Knowing she was trying to do something positive and warning people and bringing attention to this spiritual warfare that she's mentioning, and warning people to protect themselves and get their hearts in the right place. Um, whatever led her to do what she was doing. I mean, it could have been a result of the argument, her and her significant other were having, or this could have been just a mental break. Um, sometimes good people commit really heinous crimes. I mean, I don't know if this woman has a history of violence or if this is just kind of a snap out of the ordinary, so to say. But yeah, she's directly blaming the eclipse for, in a sense, for her behavior leading up to it. I mean, of course, this could have been premeditated. She could have woken up one day and been like, "Yeah, I'm gonna, I'm gonna hurt these people that are very close to me, and I already talked about all this astrology stuff online. Let's just tie it into that. Maybe this will be my grand exit." Um, Similar, cases have happened. Some with influencers, some with just everyday people in life. They essentially build this negative energy into something normal to normalize it for themselves, um, and almost make it relatable. If I were a very astute astrology fan, I may be like, oh my god, that's right. There's an eclipse. I need to go and get some protection crystals, and I need to, I need to do a cleansing because this, eclipse is going to bring all this energy. It makes sense. I think she's almost in a way capitalizing on people's beliefs and maybe even her own beliefs, but definitely capitalizing on her beliefs and her platform. I mean, because this lady was, I guess, self-proclaimed astrology influencer. I had never heard of her prior to this, but um, definitely had some form of platform, whether it was just due to her erratic behavior or if it was just people who genuinely like look to her for spiritual guidance. It's kind of scary to think about.
No,
You know,
yeah, she had over 100,000 followers before the event.
yeah. I mean, now I know in influencer terms that may or may not be a big number, but I sure as heck can't count to 100,000.
Yeah, no, that's. I know on Twitter you probably don't see a lot of those. It's definitely out of the norm. Uh, like 5K, you're like, okay, people are looking at them. 10K, okay, good amount of eyes, and yeah, probably 100. You're like, okay, they're starting to get big. So
Yeah, and that's not just counting like engagement with her posts. People just seeing it and reading it, not necessarily following her. But yeah, I mean, social media is the outreach is crazy. So she's spouting off these things about the eclipse to so many other people. And with that, I kind of want to pivot to some other things about the eclipse because while that was a very tragic event that happened, there's some other things we kind of wanted to cover about the eclipse. Um,
before we walk away from that, I want to know what you think. Respectfully, what the most likely scenario was that caused all this, or what kind of unfolded.
if I were a betting man, I would probably say this is a long-term buildup of mental health issues. I know sometimes it's common for people in a way to self-medicate through self-soothing. Things they find comfort in. They convince themselves that it's healthy. They convince themselves that it's healing in a way. It's soothing them. It's making them better. Uh, so they typically tend to dive all the way in to these topics. For her, I believe that her form of healing was through spirituality. Um, Now this has been around for years, but I've noticed with TikTok blowing up, you've got the crystal girlies and stuff like that. You know, oh, go and buy, uh, you know, some granite. It's good for healing and blocking negative energy. Um, obviously in the medical world, buying different crystals and rocks and minerals, um, doesn't have a physical influence on your health, but there's people who believe in the spiritual properties of these minerals and stuff. So
I
I think that
I just
coupled
wanted to
with
comment
go
really
ahead,
quick.
yeah,
Um, I don't like that. A lot of the people who sell crystals are very anti-capitalism. Like, if you ask them, capitalism's bad, but they're literally selling rocks to people for like so much.
right,
Like, that is so capitalistic.
yeah, like they're paying people to like take stuff out of the earth, which was like there for free, and then like they're taking that and like selling it to other people for a profit.
Like,
Anyway, yeah, capitalism. Yeah,
capitalism. That's pretty expensive too. Like, some of the
yeah.
special healing crystal. Let's look up some prices, shall we? Shopping.
Oh
So
man, I've seen them. Like
they got
you got
shops.
yeah. I mean,
Arizona
you
has
go to the
shops, right?
mall. Yeah. I mean, you can go to the mall and get this stuff. I mean, no, it's hard to tell. Are you buying just a chunk of glass, or are you, you know, are you buying an actual piece of amethyst or something?
Yeah,
Um,
I don't want to discredit that type of stuff because who knows? The world's
y-
weird. The fact that it exists is weird. Blah blah blah. But
yeah, I mean, if it's your belief system, if it's a form of soothing to you, then that's fine. That's perfectly fine. I mean, of course, um, don't fully bank on um, spiritual and spirituality, stuff like that. Don't fully bank on that being able to cure all your life's problems. Of course, seek the help of the professionals who are qualified to help. With whatever issues you or crisis you may be in. But for sure, if you believe that you perform these cleansing rituals and do the stuff, if that brings you peace, then by all means, I want you to be at peace. Just don't hurt anybody. If you need help, please get help.
all right. No, I definitely agree and everything. But at the same time, I'm gonna have to attack some people on this podcast. I'm gonna say it. They can't all be real. They can't all work. Pick which ones work. There's got to be some rocks that don't work. We need further testing.
Great.
But I actually looked it up and the prices aren't that bad. They'll probably get you on like roadside things. They might hike up the prices and stuff, but anyway, very capitalistic. Um,
Yeah. But yeah, I think just kind of touching back to what I was on before. Yeah, like when you have these, methods of like self-soothing and you're using that to replace, traditional like medicine and therapy and stuff like that. I think you're doing more harm than help to yourself. And I think this is something that had to be a long build up over time. Um, and then who knows? I mean, per the eyewitness of the miner that did survive the encounter, they were arguing. At some point that escalated. She's now got a weapon. And that could have been a very like heat of the moment. We don't know the specifics. Um, that could have been anything that happened in that moment. But I definitely think this form of psychotic break, and that's what I'm going to call it for now, is a psychotic break. I think it was something that built up over time due to her not properly caring for the issue she had.
okay, so the theories are very interesting. It starts with that theory that you were discussing. How in 2017 it covered that route. Um, at least with you said at least starting and ending with the Salem, right? And up to 7.
Yeah, so there were, and that's factual. There were 7 Salems that the Eclipse in 2017 traveled over.
Okay, so and I think that's where this newer theory comes into play. Um, because it has 7 Ninevehs, which is also. Do you remember what that meant in the Bible?
Nineveh. So Nineveh is a place. Um, it was a city in Mesopotamia back in like 3000 BCE up to like 600 BCE. It's referenced in the Bible as a site of sin, um, per worldhistory.org. Yeah, it's referenced as a place of sin and depravity, but
So was it
um,
just Vegas?
yeah,
Ancient Vegas?
basically, yeah. I mean, Jesus was probably over here like shooting craps or something. I don't know. I mean,
Like
it was
Stonewheel Roulette?
BC times. Yeah, basically, like shooting stone dice over there,
It learned on stone.
right?
Um,
But yeah, so Nineveh is, in its time was like this huge cultural and like religious, kind of epicenter where uh, you had many different, like you had stuff. This was back in like the times of like the Babylonians and stuff like that. Um, it's even referenced in the Bible a few times that it's most likely where like the Hanging Gardens were, kind of stuff like Babylon. Nineveh is a huge deal, in the Bible. Or I'm not a religious man, so I've not read the Bible cover to cover or anything, but according to these sources I've gone over here, it seems pretty important. I definitely won't downplay that.
So yeah, no, 100%. The thing with this theory, though, so the other one did cross over many Salems. This one didn't actually cross over that many Ninevehs. So I mean, statistically, we kind of looked into the city names and everything. There's not too many cities that are repeated in the U.S. Over like 10. Like the big ones are, president names like Washington, not Jefferson. I think people don't dislike him, but like Franklin. He's the quirky
Yeah,
old dude that killed people. We'll get into that too. Um,
yeah. I think there's like a bunch of cities here named like Springfield.
yeah,
Common names. Nineveh is a really old world name for a town, or for a city. I believe there's actually two Ninevehs in the U.S. or something like that. There's not seven, um, or if there is, they weren't in the path of totality
yeah.
for the April 8th eclipse.
So there's
Um,
this one I did a good bit of research on. There's six real ones, and one of them's kind of iffy. It's like a subtown. But there's
hmm,
six. There's six real ones, and then it was only in the path of I think it's semi-crossed another one, which is still a little weird. I'll give you that three. Um, but it was in the full path of two of them. One in Indiana. I want to say Ohio, Indiana, and Ohio.
hmm.
So yeah, that's kind of where that was at. Um, and like it is interesting that there's two of them, but yeah, it wasn't seven, and that was the idea plastered everywhere. And on top of that, why? What I want to know is why did the theory change? If it was Nibiru when it crossed over the other things, why is it not Nibiru now? Why is it now something else?
Yeah, and I think a big part of that is so in the 2017 eclipse. I mentioned this earlier, but there were seven different Salems in the path of totality um, for that eclipse. And that's really interesting and coincidental. But Salem is also a really old word. In the Old Testament, Salem meant peace. So I guess where this kind of blows up with the whole Nineveh thing is, you've got these seven Salems, you've got seven, things of peace, seven places of peace, and you've got seven Ninevehs, which is a place of sin and depravity, and these are supposedly crossing over each other. So it's where peace, or it's where sin, meets peace. Uh, so a lot of people kind of took that to be a sign of like, well, this is the end times. We've got earthquakes and eclipses, and the last eclipse meant peace, and this one means sin and depravity is coming back to the world. This is going to be the second coming. So I think that kind of overshadowed the whole Nineveh thing. Plus, I think people realized, if there was like a giant shadow planet, obviously we would probably know where it's at by now.
It's a good hider.
Hey man, it's dark. Space is dark. I get it. You know, my
Right.
dog. I have a black dog. When he's laying in my bed and the lights are off in my room, I don't know where he's at. I've laid on him like 4 times this week.
It could be a completely dark planet. It could be like very dark stone. It could be completely obsidian. You wouldn't see it.
Right?
And then guess what? The eclipse in 2044. Boom. That's it. I'm starting it right now. That's what's going to happen. Allegedly.
I love spreading misinformation on the internet.
Allegedly. I don't want to get sued by big Nibiru or anything.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh yeah. They'll take you down. They'll find you. Yeah. I think one thing that as we were kind of prepping for this episode yesterday, the discussion we had kind of really at least makes sense. Um, the concept of misinformation and how these rumors and theories get blown so far out of proportion are they come from somebody who thinks they know something about a topic, explaining that to somebody who knows nothing about that topic. And
often impressionable too.
yeah, so I mean, if I knew nothing about Eclipse, I had never seen one, I had never heard of one, and then somebody who kind of knows about eclipses was like, "Hey, did you know that next week the sun and the moon are going to be in the same place at the same time?" And for like 3.5 minutes, it's just going to be like dark as hell outside. Like it's going to be like nighttime at like 11 in the morning. I'd probably lose my mind. I'd be like, well, what does this mean? Like, what is going to happen? Like, that's not supposed to happen. Something bad is going to happen. I think that's kind of where that panic sets in, and it's really easy to just imagine something happening. And like, oh my god, if there's an eclipse, then obviously the world is ending because the poles on the Earth are going to flip because there's a shadow planet. It's Planet X. You know, NASA has known about this for years, or they didn't know about it until now. And then, this is what's gonna happen. You're just gonna have to believe me because I believe it. So I think that's kind of where a lot of this comes from. It's just misinformation that kind of plays a weird game of telephone through people on Facebook and very impressionable adults who probably need to be less chronically less online.
No, 100%. And then these theories kind of make their ways into different types of groups. Still conspiracy theorists, but different types. And then it gets in the hands of these groups, and then it kind of twists their belief, and then say you get all these different conspiracy theories about the same thing. So, I mean, that can make a lot of sense.
There's also like people, yeah, and I'm positive, they exist because I probably fall into this category. People who just love to spread misinformation just to troll. Like, have you seen the video of like
I do that too.
there's like a TikTok of like this guy like sitting on a couch like with his grandma and like got like GTA 5 on the screen and he's like, I told my grandma that like GTA 5 was the news, and it's like him like driving a car all crazy through the street and like flipping around and stuff. And the grandma's like losing her mind. She's like, "Oh my God, they're at the pier.
I love
They're in
that
Santa
video.
Monica." Yeah, yeah, and the kids just like trying not to like lose it, laughing. But it's like it's not the grandma's fault. She doesn't know what Grand Theft Auto 5 is. She probably doesn't even know what a PlayStation 5 is. She's just a sweet old lady, but because she doesn't know these things, she's impressionable. You know, so like that's kind of like what I mean. Like that old lady probably went on Facebook after that. I was like, oh my god, like rest in peace to all the victims of that crazy man in Santa Monica today. If you didn't know what happened, a man drove his car up and down the pier and killed 37 people. I've seen it happen myself. I know it happened. I mean, you got people who are like, oh my god, somebody out there just killed a bunch of people in Santa Monica. What does that mean? You know, clearly there's something deeper into this.